Hello everyone, welcome back to my tutorial series on how to make a Unity FPS game without any scripting. Today we're going to be covering aim down sights capabilities, where when we hold our right mouse button it animates to aim down sights, and when we let go it goes back to our hip, and also when we aim the crosshair goes away and comes back. We'll also be adding gunshot sounds and bullet ricochets at the point we hit an object. So let's get into it. Okay, so in the last video when we made our gun shoot, I put in an unnecessary state in our gun. So we're gonna fix this real quick. So we don't need this because the only thing this is doing is checking for if something was hit, and the reason we don't need this is because that's what the raycast is doing itself. So we can completely delete this and move the I hit something event transition to this state, and it should work the same exact way, except we won't have that unnecessary event in there. Alright, to make our aim down sights, we are going to make some animations. So let's go to My Assets, create a new folder, and we'll call that Animations. And we'll actually put this Animations folder in with our 3D models, and it looks like we need to make a folder for our Glock, so we can put everything that corresponds with the Glock inside here, and we can actually make in our 3D models a weapons folder, because we're going to make other things besides just weapons for 3D models. So we have our weapons and we have our Glock, and in the Glock we have animations, and we're going to make a new animation. But before we make a new animation, we will click on our Glock, right click, create an empty, and this we can put outside the Glock and actually put our Glock into this. So our Glock is a parent of this object, which we can name Glock. We will also make a weapons folder if we eventually start making other weapons. We can hold different weapons and switch between them, so we'll make a weapons holder, and we'll put that in the first person character. So in our first person character, and we'll put the Glock in weapons. In our first person character we have the look at me, which is our smooth weapon movement, and our weapons. And inside our weapons we have the main Glock, and so since we did this, we can have a left arm and we can animate that separately. So we can copy paste our right arm and move it over. We actually want to put our right arm in weapons and our Glock in the right arm, because our right arm is holding the Glock. And we want to rename this to left arm, and put that in our Glock as well. So now in our Glock we have a right arm and a left arm, and we can animate them individually with this Glock folder. But for right now we do not need the left arm. So now when we do our sprinting animations, we can have the left arm separate from the right arm movement. But we're not going to be doing that today. We just want to have it set up because we are going to be animating our gun. So we're going to click on our Glock, and we want to create a new animation. So we'll go to Windows, Window, Animation, and we want to create a new animation. And we can name this AIM, or ADS, aim down sights. Save that into our Glock animations, and we will press the record button. Our Glock right now is at 000, and now we want to go forward about, we'll just go forward so we can place another keyframe, and we will move our gun so that we are aiming down sights, and you can zoom in to see exactly what we're doing. It looks like the end sight is a little small, so just to make it look better, we can turn the we'll make it wider here. So we'll go and click on here and widen that out, as well as make the cylinder a little bit bigger. Press F to focus on it. Move it down. Not that much. Okay. Alright, so let's go back to our animation. Okay, so we have an animation that transitions from our hip aim to our aim down sights. So our next animation, we want to do the exact opposite. So I should have named that one rather hip to ADS instead of just ADS, because now we're going to create an aiming animation, and well, we can name this aiming idle actually. And in this aiming idle, all we need to do is copy the ending from here, which is our gun position when we're aiming down sights, and put it in our aiming idle. And this should stay constant and will just loop like that. And this is the animation that will be playing while we are aiming down our sights. The next animation is going to be back to hip, I guess. Yeah, we can name it back to hip. And this one is the exact opposite of ADS. So we'll just copy both of these keyframes and paste them in back to hip and just reverse them. So we'll put this at the 20, this here. So now we have from our aim down sights to our hip fire. And we have our aiming idle, and we have from our hip fire to aim down sights. So now what we're going to do is go into our animator, and you can see it's created these. Oh, we do need to make a Glock idle animation, so we need to make one more animation, I forgot. This animation is going to be called hip idle. In this hip idle, we just want to make it basically the same as our aiming idle, except it's at the hip. So we'll copy our aim ADS, the first part of it, and go to our hip idle and paste it. And now that will stay constant. We'll save all of our animations with Control S just to make sure they're all updated. Okay, once we're done making our animations, we'll go over to our animator. And if you don't see this, you go to Window and go down to Animator. And you can see that this is our default animation, but we don't want it to be on aim down sights because we don't want to start aiming down sights. We want to start on our hip fire. So we'll create our hip idle as the default state. And we also need to make a new parameter, which is a bool. A bool is true or false, so we can either be aiming or not aiming, so we'll name that aiming. Check mark is true, unchecked is false. And the way we are going to decide if we're aiming or not is through transitions. So we'll make a transition to aim down sights. this is our transition to aiming idle. So we move this over here. And the condition to get to transition to our aiming idle, the aiming bool needs to be true. And it is not true right now. So the way to set this up is we'll go to our Glock, add a new FSM, not that, add a new PlayMaker FSM. In this FSM we're going to name the state, actually we're going to name this FSM ADS for aim down sights. In this FSM we want to create a start state which will be called idle. We want to create a new state called aim down sights. In our idle state we're going to go to our action browser and add a get mouse button down. Our get mouse button down will be our right, because we want our right mouse button to activate our aiming, and this will send the event is aiming, and we will hold control and make that transition to our aim down sights. In our aim down sights we want to create a get mouse button up, because if we let go of our right mouse button we no longer want to be aiming, and make that right, and it will send the event done, or we'll name this not aiming. Create that event, add the transition, and basically create a loop. So now when we watch this, if we hold down our right mouse button we will be aiming, and if we let go we are not aiming anymore. And what is going on with this? What the heck? Okay, so the reason it's doing this right now, as you can see the gun is all warpy and stuff, this is because of our weapon sway script. Since we made our Glock a child of weapons, it is now just acting all weird. So we gotta go to our Glock and we will copy this weapon sway script, and then we'll remove it. We'll go to our Glock and then we'll add it back by right clicking on animator or an existing component, and then paste component as new, and that should fix it. So back to the aim down sights script. We got it set up, basically all the buttons set up. So now we need it to do something. What it's going to do is set this parameter to true and false, either way. So we need to do that by going to our action browser and type in set animator bool, and we want to set this. We want to specify the Glock, so we'll drag this in, make the parameter aiming, and we want to make the value false on this one, so we don't do anything. We'll copy this and paste it into the other state, and we want to make the value on here true. So now you'll see that something is going to happen now. When we hold down our right mouse button, you can see it is animating, but it's animating like twice on each one, and it's going back to hip idle without any even if we keep our right mouse button down. So first of all, we can fix this condition. The condition of it going back to our hip idle is going to be because aiming is false. So if we're not aiming, it's going to go back to hip idle. Okay, we'll click on our transition and we'll fix the transitions. So we won't have an exit time because we want it to transition whenever we press our right mouse button. So we're not going to have it wait until the transition, until the animation is over. We want it to do it anytime. And we want to make this pretty short. We don't need it to blend that much since our animation basically blends it. So that should be good now for there. As you can see, it works, but the other ones need some fixing. So we'll go into here. This does need to have an exit time because as soon as the aim down sights animation is done playing, we want it to animate over to our animation idle. So the way we'll do this is by throwing it at the end of the clip, making sure we only have one ADS, and put our aiming idle at the beginning, or the at the very end. On this one, we don't want to have an exit time because as soon as we let go of our right mouse button, we want it to animate back into our hip idle state. So we will also make this very short and make sure that is pretty much on the start. We can make this pretty short. A little trick to get this at the very beginning is just to throw it over here and it will automatically snap back there. So this is good, and this one will have an exit time. So as soon as our back to hip animation is done, we only want it to play once, so we'll move it over there. As soon as it's done, we want it to fade into our hip idle. Alright, so now everything should be set up, so let's try it out. So we'll hold our right mouse button, and as you can see, it aims in, but looks like our aim down sights is a little offset there. And when we let go, it goes back to our hip idle. Aim in, aim out. Okay, so right now our animation is offset. The easiest way to fix that is by going, while the game is playing, go to our animator, click aiming so that we can see what our gun looks like while we're aiming down sights, and then we'll go to our hierarchy view and select our look at me. Go back to our scene, and we can move the look at me according to where we need our aim down sights position. So we'll just move it right over the center, our crosshair. So that looks pretty good right there. And now we need to make note of these three values. So what I'm going to do is take a picture on my phone, or you can write them down, however you want to do it. But take note of these values, and once we have stopped playing, we'll go back to the look at me, and you can see that it's changed back to normal, and then we'll just type in the values that we recorded. So in my case, it was negative 0.037. The Y was negative 0.3337. And the Z was negative, it's the same thing, negative 1.53. Now when we play, it goes to exactly where we set it. And we can shoot while we're aiming down sights as well. And it's a little slow, so let's speed up our animations. The way we can do that is by going to our animator, going to our animation, changing the speed to 2, so we can make it twice as fast. And we only need to change the transition animations. And now it's faster. Alright, let's add some sound in now, so when we shoot our gun, it makes a gun fire sound effect, and we'll also add in some ricochets on the 3D point in which we shot. The way we're going to do this is by going to our Glock. We want to go to our shooting FSM. So we'll go to our Glock into shoot. In this FSM, we want to go to check if hit, because this is where we are shooting with our raycast. So we want to go to actions, not add, play sound. Yeah, play sound. And we don't have sound. So I have some sound on my desktop, but first I'm going to make a folder because organization is important. So we'll go to our Glock, create a new folder, and we will call this sounds. In the sounds we will drag in, as you can see, this is my gunshot sound effect, and these are all the ricochet sound effects, so we'll drag those in as well. And these will be in the link in the description, so you can download them and use them yourself. But we'll go back to our Glock, and on this state we want it to play the gunshot sound effect, and that should do it. So let's try this out. Okay, no sounds coming through. Why? Okay, so the reason it's doing this is because we don't have a position on our sound. So we need to store ourself or our gun as a variable. So we'll go to get position, and we can move this down. Oh no, that is not the reason. The reason this is happening is because of this right here. We need to put this in front of this because basically the state is read from top to bottom. So as soon as it gets to the wait and it sees that it doesn't need to wait to go anywhere, it just leaves without having to worry about playing the sound. So we need to prioritize our sound by putting it above wait. Now that should do it. Okay, why can't I hear sound? What the heck? Oh, okay. So yeah, as I was saying, it does read from top to bottom. That means anything that happens in the raycast event is it's going to change events without worrying about this play sound or this get position. So we need to move both of these up here. And now that should do it. So no matter where we shoot, it should play the sound. And it's working. Okay. So it looks like we can't hit cubes in a certain distance. And this is because we have a collider body on our character controller. So to fix that, we'll go to our FPS controller and go to layer, and we'll change the layer to ignore raycast. And it will say, do you want to set the layer to ignore raycast for all the child objects, which would be everything under the FPS controller. And we don't need to do that right now, so we'll just press no, this object only. And now that fixes it. We can get close to an object and still shoot it. To create ricochet effects, we'll go to our Glock, go to shoot, and we need to add the sounds here. In our state, this actually should be called add force. So in our add force state, we will add sounds. We have 5 different sounds that we want to play and one of them is actually going to be a rare sound. To do this, we'll go to play random sound. We have 5 audio clips, and you'll see that it changed the weight, which is basically the volume, I figured, of the 2 we just added to 0, so we'll set those back up to 1. And we'll add in our rare first, Ricochet 1, Ricochet 2, Ricochet 3, and Ricochet 4, and Ricochet 4. And for our rare Ricochet, since we don't want it to play as often, we will turn basically the weight, which is the percentage. Actually, it's not the volume, it's actually the percentage. So we'll change the percent, so the odds between it being played and the rest are going to be lower. We can do that by turning it down to something like 0.2. So that means it will play only 20% of the time or less. For right now, we'll leave it at 5 so you guys can hear what the rare Ricochet sounds like. Oh, we can't. Well, I guess we can't. There it is, the rare Ricochet. But as you can see, the sound is just playing wherever we are creating the sound. But we want the sound to play wherever we hit an object. So to do this, we'll go back to our Glock, go to our shoot, and in the play random, we need to change the position to our hit point, which is also the same position that we are adding force to it. So now, when we shoot, you'll see it plays the sound at the spot we hit an object. And when we aren't shooting an object, it won't play the sound. And when we get closer, it gets louder. So I'm going to turn up my rarity in my play random sound. We'll turn that all the way down to 0.2. So the chance of the rare Ricochet playing is very small. So one last thing we can do is get rid of the crosshair when we aim down sights. So the way we can deactivate our crosshair when we aim down sights is by dragging this into our ADS state. We'll go to Game Object, Set Property, go to our Property, Active, and we won't set the value. So that will basically turn it off. So we also want to turn it back on when we go back to our hip idle. So we'll paste it in the idle state and set the value on. Now when we play, when we aim down sights, it turns it off, and when we de-aim, it puts it back on. So that gets it out of the way and we can aim down our sights nice. Alright, so this sight is still kind of small, too small for me, so I'm going to make it bigger. Yeah, that is much better. I like that more. Alright, so we now have aim down sight capabilities. We've added gun shooting sound effects. And we also have bullet ricochet sounds at the point that our bullet meets an object. And that's basically it for this tutorial. And I'll see you in the next one. See ya.